move on. Next slide. This is the agenda. We will have these presentations and then we will have questions and answers and discussions. There are many experts in the room who would probably want to also briefly contribute to what we have learned. And then we will shortly announce the next meeting, and we will definitely update you on the fastest bean competition in the end that is already up and running. Next slide. The feedback questionnaire. Okay, will that appear in the chat now? Is this the idea? You're welcome to fill it in. Yeah, there is a Mentimeter questionnaire, and this is the title of our session. Next slide. And next slide. Okay, the first thing I wanted to emphasize is that also with the shortages that come from the war, we are still in a phase of heavy and actually destructive overproduction, agricultural overproduction. The hunger crisis we may be facing this year has nothing to do with a shortage, with a physical shortage of calories available. Next slide, please. And whenever we talk about such shortages, we should keep in mind that at this moment, only 42% of the grains are used as food. 36% are used as animal feed and 22 are used for other uses. The main part of that being fuel and energy production. So more than half of the grains we produce are not used as food. And this is the big supply buffer we have. It's not a problem of producing more at this moment. Next slide, please. But it is a problem of access and affordability, and the World Bank and others have three categories. Here you see where affordability, and affordability means more than 63% of the household income of the necessary calories are jeopardized. Next slide. Here you can see how many percent of the households have problems to afford a nutritionally adequate diet, not just the calories, but also, for instance, a proper balance of proteins and hydrocarbons and also micronutrients and so on and so forth. Next slide. Here you can see how many households have a problem to afford the diet that is recommended by their health and food institutions, a healthy diet, right? And here you can see that also in the industrialized world, up to 10% have a problem, and this is increasing now. Next slide, please. Before the crisis we are probably entering now, we already had more than 800 million people undernourished. Next. And that's the way they distribute around the world. The darker, the more people suffer from food insecurity, according to the FAO. Next slide, please. And at the same time, 2.5 billion people in the world are overweight. Over 1 billion is obese. Overnutrition has become a more severe health issue globally than undernutrition. Next slide. And when we are talking about the price development now, it is not that the wheat prices go through the roof because wheat is so scarce. The wheat prices are, that is since a long time. I'm showing here the curves of 2014 to end of 2021, and that is continued, are exactly depicting the energy prices. The lower curve is the oil price, the upper curves are the wheat prices in different regions of the world. This is the core of the speculation with food. Next slide, please. And you can also see here from wheat, maize, soybeans, these are speculation affected commodities. And the price of the wheat that goes up now, even further up than you can see here, is sharply contrasted with the price of rice that you can see in the middle and on the right side, which is the food of the majority of people in the world, and that is not affected by the present speculation and turmoils of the price. Next slide. And as far as I can see, this is the general advice of the experts. We need, in order to counter the shortages and the problems of export from the Ukraine, alternative export routes from the Ukraine. That is obvious, and governments are working on that. And we will have to replace a certain amount of wheat exports, specifically from the Ukraine and probably also Russia. It depends to be seen how Russia behaves, with the ample provision there is from the stocks there are from the Western industrialized world. The main source for any shortages is to reduce the feed consumption of food commodities. We could easily replace the shortages that may come from the Ukraine and other places by simply reducing the pork production in Germany, for instance, by only 10%. And we have to reduce, and we have to ultimately phase out in the long run the production of energy and fuel from cropland. It must not compete with food production, and we have to intervene in the speculation with food commodities. You're probably all familiar with the fact that about 10 times the amount of wheat physically available is traded at the Matif in Paris, at the Seabot in Chicago, and other places of the world. And it is a casino. It is not anymore a real exchange of wheat against money and buffering the risks and so on and so forth. We must stop that speculation. And here in Europe, we have I would say, really tragic discussion at this moment, where the little steps towards more climate friendly, better resource using and biodiversity preserving farming is now under heavy fire, under the headline of now is war, now is scarcity, now let's forget about reduction of pesticides, of fertilizers, of biodiversity measures, and so on and so forth. The opposite is true. We have to actually do the right thing faster and not go back to the wrong thing. Next slide. And you can see, and this is probably interesting, that the important protein supply per capita has developed in the high-end regions such as Europe and Germany, not so very much, but you see on the right side that China has now the same kind of overconsumption actually of protein as industrialized countries, while India has basically stood stable, and Kenya as well. Next slide. And here, these are 3 slides that show you the composition of the protein in selected areas of the world. You see USSR and United States and European Union were top in 1961. You see Kenya, India, and China that I have selected much lower. And you see the red part is the animal share and the brown part is the plant share in the protein consumption. Next slide. That substantially expands already in the 80s. Next slide. And today we even have a bigger share of animal protein in the overall protein consumption. This is where we have to shift and where, despite all the problems, for instance, India and Kenya are actually shining examples of a future composition between plant and animal-based protein sources. Overall, 62 grams per day is a little low, but it is not as much low as 110 or 104 gram are overconsumption. Okay, next slide. Here we go, and thank you for your attention to a short ride through the hunger ABC, and now to the Ukraine, where Leopold Rittler will report what Donau Soja, Danube Soja, experiences at his second headquarters, so to speak, in Kiev. Over to you. Thank you.
Hello from my side. Thank you very much, Benedict. You set up the scene very nicely, Benedict, already. I can agree with so much what you said already. So thank you very much for this. Yeah, very good and straight to the point introduction also. Yeah, my name is Leo Rittler. I'm from Donau Soja, Head of Research and Innovation there. And yeah, thanks for the invitation today to give you an insight, a presentation shortly about Donau Soja, what we are doing, soybean in Europe, and a focus then on Ukraine. Next slide, please. Yeah, so legumes. I have been asked by the organizers just to sum it up again. Why? What are the benefits from having legumes in rotations or growing legumes? It's an excellent source of protein for food. It's the foundation for a lot of food culture. It's an excellent resource, efficient resource conversion from something that we are not able to access as human beings into protein-rich food. It's also for ecosystems, another dimension we can where legumes are beneficial. They are pioneer plants and are settling among the first on native soils or native areas. And in the role of food production, and I think you're all aware of this, they have excellent functions or features like the biological nitrogen fixation. They are very useful for good soils and soil fertility, and they also provide food for pollinators. So really, in a nutshell, yeah, they are excellent plants, and we should make better use of them. Next one, please. Soybean in Europe. Yeah, soybean in Europe. Just let me say a few words because I want to disagree with so many cliches which are there about soybean, which are not really applicable for the situation of soybean production in Europe. Most think when they hear about soybean, they think about rainforest, they think about GMO, they think about environmental destruction, and a lot of the other very problematic things. In Europe, soybean is the most cultivated legume on cropland, and it has become one of the important income for 10,000s of farmers in the central eastern part of Europe. This means I'm talking about the belt from southern France, Switzerland, Austria, Italy, Romania, Serbia, and the Ukraine. There, soybean has become a very important part of crop rotations and stand next to wheat or maize or sunflower in rotations. Typical feature is that all registered varieties in Europe are non-GM. There might be some illegal production of GM cultivars. Soybean is also a very good low input crop. It doesn't need nitrogen fertilizers, and we are lucky in a situation we don't need insecticides or fungicides here in Europe for the production. And also a good, very positive feature, I think, also is that the organic yields of organic soybean production are quite on the same level like the conventional. So we can produce it really environmentally friendly here. And also, this is maybe some of for you interesting. Also, soybean can not only be grown with the grain use, the dry grain. It can also be harvested in the fresh use. So it's the edamame cultivation. So you can also grow it in your own gardens or on the balcony. I've been just doing it again this summer or this year. I'm gonna sow edamame seeds again, and they are really excellent, an excellent dish. Yeah. The typical situation for the soybean sector in Europe is mostly in the feed located and with special market segments, the non-GM, regional markets, regional food markets, and organic markets. We also see a strong growth in the food sector, particularly thinking about the soy drinks and also veggie products, so soy patties, for example. Yeah, and the oil is also an important component. Beside of 40% of protein, it also has 20% of oil, soybean. And this is used in a large extent in feed, but also fuel, but it has also a potential as a food, as a substitute. And this is maybe also relevant in terms of the current war to substitute sunflower. This is the current use, but it doesn't need to, this is just how it is today. I think if we're thinking about a more sustainable future, this can also all be changed also. The next one, please. So Ukraine. Ukraine is not only a major producer of cereals and sunflower, it's also an important producer in a regional context of soybeans. In Europe, we had about 4.3 million hectares of soybean last year, and about 1/3 is located in Ukraine. On this map, you see the areas where soybean is cultivated. These are the green and the blue areas. The blue ones are one of our partner companies, and the red areas, this is where in recent weeks the hotspots of the war are happening. So in terms of soybean, we are, let's say, the situation is not as catastrophic like with other cereals or with sunflower. So there is the good message here that the soybean is still be grown, and our farmers, and we have also an office in Kiev, and they tell us, yes, farmers are, despite all the difficulties of the war, going to the fields, and they are sowing soybeans. And the acreage is, in total in Ukraine, it might be even increasing this year, despite the war. And this is because the silos, they are not empty yet. They have problems with exporting. So they need crops with a lower yield compared to wheat, for example, or corn, so that the silos, the storing capacities don't run out if they have shortages with export. So soybean, Ukraine is a net exporter of soybeans. This means they are producing much more actually than they need locally. So they are supplying Europe, but also Africa and Asian countries with the soybean exports, and they are used as food and feed ingredient there. Next one, please. Yeah, Ukraine is not only a producer of soybean, but it also grows currently also other legumes. We have around 300,000 hectares of legumes, of other legumes there. Mostly this is peas. Peas is used, to our knowledge, mostly for feed, but also in food purposes. But the beans, the chickpeas, and other legumes like lentils, they have the major use as food product. When you look into trade statistics, you find that most of these legumes are that Ukraine serves as a trade destination also for these legumes, and much of them also go to North African countries and also to Asian countries. So there, Ukraine is a trade station, and I think the next slide shows that this trade is now currently very affected negatively. So you need to understand that most of the exports of Ukraine were usually going through the harbor in Odessa. This is the south of Ukraine, and they were used to export 4 to 5 million tons over there. And before the war, only around 10% were exported by the land route and 90% over the sea route. And this is currently the big problem, that the land route is not established so much yet to compensate the shortages which arise from the sea blockage in the Black Sea. So this is what we also as Donau Soja currently are working on to support Ukrainian companies, Ukrainian exporters, to find partners to overcome these logistical shortages at the borders, to overcome also and also to find partners who in the trade who take up for the market uptake in Europe, and also who can then maybe also export it further. You see also the routes which are currently the most used ones. One is going through Romania to the port of Constanța, and there over the ships then to the global seas. And for the European supply, the Romanian port is important, but also the land routes by train and by trucks through Poland to the Polish ports, and also some to the German ports. Yeah, this is in regard to the logistical problems currently. Just today, we had also had a high-level meeting in Frankfurt, attended by the Ukrainian ministry, and there they also mentioned that they are currently establishing or in discussion with the World Food Programme to set up humanitarian routes for exports over the Black Sea. So this is something which is pushed forward also with Russia, that this is kind of also not only humanitarian routes for humans, but also for food exports. We sincerely hope that these discussions for grain exports will be successful. And yeah, my colleagues in Kiev and also my colleagues here in Donau Soja, we continue supporting them with the international collaboration. So this was a really short wrap up, and yeah, happy to take any questions afterwards.
Thank you so much, Leo, also for being just in time. And we move directly over to Lopamudra Sahu from our partner Edible Roots in Delhi. She's a microbiologist by profession, and she works with an organic farmers network in the east of India. Over to you.
Thanks, Benny, for this introduction. Good evening, everyone. Hi, this is Lopamudra from Edible Roots, New Delhi, India. We are India's one of the largest organic farming organization. We set up kitchen gardens, rent out community farms for urban growers, conduct workshops in organic farming and sustainability, and sell farming products. Our non-for-profit organization, Edible Roots Foundation, works at the intersection of ecological restoration and community development through regenerating landscapes, developing knowledge, expertise of local native species, and building ecologically conscious communities. So we have been discussing about legumes and hunger. So the Indian scenario over here, I'll be discussing in the next slide. I think, yeah, according to FAO, the estimates of 2020 report, about approximately 189.2 million people are undernourished in India. You also have seen that in Benny's presentation. So it's almost like 14% of the population is undernourished in India, which where 51.4% of women are anemic, and 34.7% of children are stunted growth. Malnourished children are subject to high risk of death from illnesses like dengue, typhoid, diarrhea, pneumonia, and malaria. Even the Hunger Index 2019 ranks India at 102 out of 117 countries. However, a point to be noted over here is that malnutrition is not uniform throughout the country, and its prevalence corresponds to the uneven levels of economic development between different regions. So, various researchers have, the experts have mapped opportunities for India to reduce hunger and improve overall nutrition by reorienting in its agricultural policies in favor of more nutritious food. It will also help reach India's goals towards achieving zero hunger by 2030, a sustainable development goal established by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015. So to provide its people with nutritious food, India must turn the focus of its food policies from quantity to quality. In this line, various policies that promote access to and availability of nutritious rich food. Much of the country is left with diets higher in either nutrient poor grains or fattening processed foods. So the poor nutrition status of the population is a major challenge. So the government is responding by adapting nutrition sensitive agriculture interventions, focusing on pulse crops there's the grain legume having multiple nutritional values with essential source of vitamins, micronutrient, and protein. Pulse crops are well suited to promoting both nutritional security of the population and climate resilient agriculture, which is highly relevant in the context of climate change implications. Also, skill development in empowering small farmers, especially the women, to the new technologies and interventions that are evolving, and skill enhancement in the post-harvest processing and value addition to that, and policies and environmental technological measures to increase this legume cultivation. So making pulses available at affordable prices by boosting domestic production is the best strategy for providing nutritional security to the poor masses. Next slide, please. Can pulses serve to alleviate the food crisis? Of course, pulses play a vital role to address national food and nutritional security and tackle environmental challenges, sharing 9 to 10% food grain basket. Pulses are plant-based proteins. These are they're inexpensive source of proteins, vitamins, dietary fiber, and minerals. A rough estimate suggests that for the average Indian consumer, pulses are the lowest cost source of protein. The cost of obtaining a kg of protein from pulses is about half of that of the kg of meat, and about 1/3 of that of an equivalent quantity of milk. Cultivation of pulses builds up a mechanism to fix nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, as we know, and it tends to fix almost 72 to 350 kgs of nitrogen per hectare per year, thereby meeting their own nitrogen requirements to a great extent. So more than 12.5 pulses that are grown over a year are generally produced in poor soils not suited to other crops, with their minimum use of resources and a very low water footprint. Pulses can be a mainstay across the seasons in various regions due to India's diverse agroclimatic conditions. Pulses fit well in mixed intercropping systems, crop rotation and dry farming, provide green vegetable, pods and beans, and nutritious fodder for cattle, as well as they're contributing to a more sustainable food system. Pulses also and the one more thing, pulses can also be included in the public distribution system. That will actually push the farmers to grow more pulses. Pulses are grown in all the 3 seasons in India. We are mostly the Kharif or Rabi summer. There's the autumn and spring season and summer season. We grow all these crops, all the 3 crops. There is the green, there's the grams, black grams, then cowpea, then horse gram. In the winter season or the autumn season, we grow lentils, peas, rajmas, lentils. The summer green gram, black gram, and cowpeas are grown. Next slide, please. Next slide. How pulses can serve to alleviate the food crisis. Sorry. Just a second. Pulses cultivation in India from deficiency to self-sufficiency. Yes, the pulses, the grown over area are mostly rain-fed areas. The two most critical factors for immediate increase in pulses production was the minimum support price and MSP and procurement from farmers directly at MSP. These were the two steps taken by the government of India, and additional coverage was provided for pulses under the National Food Security Mission, which was launched in 2016-17. So increasing the MSP of pulses coupled with robust procurement operations under price support scheme or price stabilization funds have given the farmers a much needed breather in uncertain agri-climatic conditions. The otherwise fallow land is now being used for sowing two pulse crops, both in the winter and in the autumn and in the spring season in most of the regions. Better utilization of land resources and the increased income from two crops coupled with soil productivity increase and fodder for animals has found resonance with farmers. So by following this cluster approach, as part of which under the National Food Security Mission program, better quality of seeds were demonstrated and provided to farmers. Mission approach for promotion of pulses had for large-scale adoption, which resulted in high yield. With this program, there has been a reduction in import dependence of pulses to an extent that we are now exporting pulses. So we have reached to self-sufficiency from pulses deficiency. During 2005-6, the total production of pulses in India was 13.38 million metric ton, which increased to 25.58 million metric ton during 2021. This shows an impressive growth of 91% or a compound annual CAGR of 4.42%. And so the country has reached very close to self-sufficiency in this sector.
Lopamudra, if you have a little bit of time, some people in the chat have questions. So Nicolas Carton asks, in which season chickpeas are grown in India?
It's grown in 3 seasons: the summer season, autumn, and spring season.
Okay, thank you. And Leopold Rittler asks, how do you think will the uptake of pulses in India will develop in India in the next 10 to 20 years if we consider a scenario that GDP per capita grows and malnutrition rate decreases?
If you can repeat the question, actually, I couldn't hear your question. If you can repeat that question, please.
How do you think will the uptake of pulses develop in India since the GDP per capita will grow and the malnutrition rate will decrease?
Yeah, yes. I guess India's the way India's production, as I mentioned, that India's production has increased from 13.38 million to 25.58 million. So in that sense, the import dependence of pulses will reduce. So in that, it will also increase the farmers. It will encourage the farmers to grow more pulses, and with the policies that the government of India is supporting for more and more production of pulses along with the other cereals, I think this is going to help improve its GDP also, because we have a diversified group of pulses in our country.
Okay, thank you. There are other questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, but we will now keep them for the discussion at the end. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Lopa. This was the end of the presentation here. for the moment? Then we would.
I think there are some
it
more
is
slides.
not. It is not.
There's one
Okay,
slide.
come on. Yeah, please.
Yeah, there was one slide to
Mhm.
to just show about our work at edible roots. We encourage farmers and tribal people to grow crops naturally and sustainably. These pictures are from Rajasthan, where these pulses grow only in monsoon, as they depend on rainwater to grow the seasonal crop. The best thing is this rainwater provides the necessary macronutrients to the crop, and leguminous crops still contains nitrogen fixing bacteria in their root nodules, and they don't need any supply of fertilizers. So these dals that the dals, as we say it, we grow and without any chemical fertilizers or pesticides. These are unpolished and stone grounded to retain its nutrients and flavors. So these were one of our products that we sell in our farms from our farms. There's
Okay. Thank you very much, Lopa, for this. And as the time is running, time is flying, we directly move over to Daniel Wanjama, who comes from another country of great experience with pulses and legumes from Kenya, and who is the head of the Seed Savers Kenya, an old partner of ours. And I'm very much looking forward to hear about the situation in Kenya at this moment. Over to you, Daniel, please.
Thank you very much, Benny. And I am happy to welcome you all to this presentation. Yeah, I am in Kenya, in Gilgil. Gilgil is towards northwestern Kenya. And here we consume a lot of beans and of course other crops, but beans are very important in our diet. As you have seen those data that meat consumption in Kenya is very, very low, and most of the protein come from the beans and other legumes. Let's move. So Seed Savers Network, we work at the grassroots, is a network of farmers groups. And our main agenda is to improve seed access through to farmer sort of exchange and sort of connection, because seeds that are important to us, such as beans, are not normally available in the shops. They are not normally provided by seed companies, because seed companies are not interested in them, perhaps because they know if you save the seeds, you'll still get the same kind of crop, even without going to the shop now and again. So Seed Savers Network step in to improve access to those kind of seeds, the seeds that are not available at all in the shops, but they are also very important in our diet, in our production, such as beans. Let's move. So part of the problem that we are experiencing is that for the last about 2 years, we have not had the rains that we have always have in this part of Africa. That is the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia. There are many people who are now experiencing hunger, and it is increasing. And we have estimate from World Food Program that soon it will be 20 million people who will be hungry around here because of mostly drought, though we also have other factors. As we're going to see later in this presentation, we also have the issue of fuel crisis that is also driving food prices. But drought has been the main problem, which is very, very closely associated with the climate change. Even in our own village here, we were not able to produce in the last season. We had very little production, and in some areas we had zero, because when we plant, waiting for the rains, and then the rains don't come, and the crop just failed to grow, and farmers are not getting tired, and some of the farmers, even within our region, have planted three times with no harvest. So it's a serious challenge with the drought, but we are hoping now it's going to improve. Next slide. So we have a drought situation in Kenya. In April, 3.1 million people are facing starvation. And these are people mostly in the northeastern part of the country, where we have a lot of livestock. In this part of the country, we also have nomadic pastoralism, where farmers or pastoralists move from one area to another whenever there is a drought. But now that part of that kind of living, or that kind of production of livestock, is coming to an end because of land tenure system, where the government is introducing a new policy where all pastoralists are also supposed to own different part of the land. So for 2022 long rains, forecasts predict a loss of 40% of rainfall within the March to May long rain season. This is already evident as the rain seems to have gone, and we may not really have even the crop that to grow within 2 months. Even the crop that to grow within 2 months, it's also withering now. Next slide. Next, please.
Yeah. Sorry. There we are.
And of course, because of these and other factors, the prices of basic food commodities is now up by 50%. And as you can see in this market, this kind of the market where people buy cereals and other food, most of the food that is available here are different types of legumes that we normally consume here. And a lot of them, the prices are going up. Sometimes people blame that the areas that we had been producing the beans and all the other legumes are not producing enough, and others have totally failed. That's why the prices are up, or others also attributed to the cost of petrol and transportation. But all what we know is that we have high prices here. Let's move. And because of this situation, we have had a situation where now we are having riots, especially in the big cities, where people are no longer able to afford food, and you know, people are very innocent here. If there is high food prices, the blame goes to the government or the sitting government, and therefore people are rioting and demanding that food prices should be lowered. You can see we have our main food item is flour, maize flour, which is up by 60 shillings, which is actually double of what it was being sold there before. So we have this situation where the crisis is now spilling to a point where it might also affect the stability of the country. Next slide. We also have election coming up, and beg your pardon, election coming up, and elections are in 2 months. Politicians are moving around looking for votes, asking for people to vote for them. But when they go around, because a lot of time they move along the streets and they stand on the rooftop of the vehicles. So when they ask for votes, some people are holding placards to say that we need food, not elections. And therefore, this is, and Ja, as you can see in that placard, Ja means hunger. And then they say, we are going to have revolution of hunger because you guys, your concern is election when we are dying of hunger. So even politicians who are campaigning are facing hard time explaining to people how they are going to have food or how they are going to survive, because people don't want to listen to other policies. They want to hear how food is going to become more affordable. Next slide. Yeah, and you see in this picture, this is a part of the northern Kenya where people they have lost all their livestock. These are pastoralists. They have lost all their all their livestock. They have no food, and now they have to get relief food. And one thing about this particular situation is that other than the government trying to bring relief food to the hungry people, ordinary people who have something to contribute are also giving something so that the people who are hungry can have something. So there is a lot of campaign also from everyone, including NGOs, including people of goodwill, churches, who are collecting money so that Kenyans of goodwill and everybody who is sympathetic of this situation of hunger is able to contribute so that the people in the north can also be able to eat and survive this situation. There are many people who have even died of hunger, and there are many children suffering from malnutrition. And we are hoping that the situation is going to improve, and as we continue to support each other as a community. Next slide. Yeah, and this is some of the most important legumes in our country. Some of them, like the one you see, black with a white strip, they are very important in our diet. Like those ones, the dolichos, are fed to breastfeeding mother. And for instance, those particular sort of beans, we had a conversation and we asking ourselves, why does traditional knowledge inform that they are fed to mothers who are breastfeeding, or they are feeding, they are feeding their children? And so after that conversation, we said, then we need to see whether we could confirm that through laboratory nutritional analysis. And when we did the nutritional analysis from a laboratory, we confirmed that it is true. There is something special, nutritional-wise, scientifically, that is able to contribute to mothers having more milk whenever they are breastfeeding. And that's why traditionally, even today in the rurals, mothers who are breastfeeding their children are always fed with jahe. We call them jahe in our local language, but they are dolichos. Some of you might not have eaten them, but they are also very delicious. And they are found in all our ceremonies, be it dowry, be it any sort of ceremony that happen in the villages. They are always there, and they are all very popular. Beans are always intercropped with maize. Wherever someone is growing maize, between the rows of maize, this is where we have beans growing, and they always mature before the maize. And when they mature, especially in a situation of hunger, when they mature, they are the first items to provide food to the communities. However, we have a situation, especially with seed companies, that are contracting farmers or even small-scale farmers. They contract small-scale farmers to provide contract for production of maize seeds, but they don't allow these beans to continue being intercropped, which is very unfortunate. Next slide. So we have this situation of legumes production in Sub-Sahara, and this is, you can see, is it covers about 16% of land in Sub-Sahara. Next slide. And legumes play a very important role in our diet, and they mature very fast. They are the first one to harvest. They also, so therefore, they are able to be eaten before other crops. And they are also the cheapest source of protein. And they also nitrogen fixing. Therefore, they add nitrogen to the soil. They are the source of fiber, and they're also easy to prepare. Most of them you just boil. You don't need it to add anything else. And some of them are eaten as vegetables. When they produce the leaves are eaten, and they also provide vegetables. Next. So, but with the beans, we also have some challenges which we believe could be resolved through research. And some of them is that some of the beans will boil for hours. Some varieties boil for hours before they're able to say they are ready for eating. Some of them, when people eat, they'll have gas. And of course, there are no seed companies supplying beans. We also have a problem with biopiracy, where seed companies are able to register farmers' varieties and clone them and exclude farmers from using them anymore. And we also have a challenge with seed laws, because farmers have no right to save or share seeds based on the Seed and Plant Varieties Act in Kenya. Saving, sharing, exchange of seeds is defined as selling. And this make the practice illegal, even if it's traditional. Next slide. So the good thing is the stakeholders are recognizing the role of legumes in our food, and a lot of people are getting interested. There are a lot of trainings now on how to produce them. And we are also conducting this kind of trainings. And also there is a lot of advocacy on improving and increasing legumes production. Next slide. Some of the intervention that we are doing as Seed Savers Network is that we establish seed banks, and seed banks becomes a point where people are able to access seeds, like the one that you can see in the picture. We also have a seed exchange platform, an online system where farmers can be linked with the farmers, and farmers can request seeds from farmers, because we provide the kind of seeds that farmers are having and also the contacts. And we also have, we are also documenting local varieties. This, in a way, is to safeguard against biopiracy and against appropriation of farmers' varieties. We conduct a lot of capacity building on seed production and maintenance of these varieties. And we are setting women seed enterprises around seed banks, and beans are the most important seeds that are found in the seed bank because they are not also found in the normal agro shops. And we're also doing policy advocacy. The people you are seeing standing there are people who recently participated in the policy rights shop, and were able to develop some policy guidelines. Next slide. Yeah, and this is what I was talking about. One of the contributing factor to the food prices is the cost of fuel. The cost of fuel has increased by another like 30%, and that has pushed every other price up, including food. And this is also related to the war in Ukraine. Next. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Great. I have to apologize. We've run out a little bit of our time, but I think you probably couldn't stop, just as I could not, hearing firsthand from what is happening in Kenya, what is happening in India, what happened in the Ukraine. And so my suggestion is that the speakers could probably directly try and answer the questions that have appeared in the chat while we do our propaganda for next slide, please. For the next Global Bean event, very important, on the 23rd of June, we will have the first live show gardens, and probably, Nicolas, you could say 2 sentences how wonderful that will be.
Yes, we are still in the planning, but we want to take you through a short journey through some of our gardens live, and then you will have the opportunity to ask questions to all the gardeners, and we will also make some kind of round interview to the gardeners of these show gardens. Looking forward. I hope you will be there.
Cool. Please join us. There will we will get a link to the registration in a second, I guess. And next slide, please. These are the first bean news. You have received the first ones, and Lisa, you probably want to drop 2 sentences on how this project will continue.
Yes, not even 2 sentences, only one, very simple, subscribe. So the next newsletter is going to be sent out tomorrow. We waited finally the meeting today so that you have the chance to still be able to subscribe and receive it. So these are some insights that you can see from the coming newsletter.
Very nice. Thank you. And whatever you would like to contribute, please send it to Bean at 2,000 square meters to Lisa, and we will include it in the following newsletter. We hope to make this really a lively means of exchange with all our partners. And now the final slide, please.
So we have a competition which is currently running, and you are still on time. Even if you have already sown your first beans, you can let us know when you have sown them. And later, once they have reached 1 meter, or if they already have reached 1 meter, let us know too, and take a picture. Send it to bean at 2,000 square meters .eu, or you can post it on Instagram and tag us. And later at the end of the season, we will also check the final length of the bean plant, and the person who have reached the highest bean will also win a prize. So we'll have 2 prizes, which are still a surprise for now. And you can check the advancement on the landing page of the event. So we are going to post regularly the updates there.
Okay, so you can win by the meter, and you can win finally by the complete height of the plant, and we will have another beauty contest as well. This is a meter contest, actually, And here are the final instructions. You can follow us with all these kind of social media you see here. And we would be really grateful if you could fill out the feedback form so we can improve our sessions, our monthly live sessions. And Anne, you could probably once again put the link to the Menti. Yeah, it's already there in the chat. Please click on it. Don't be shy to criticize us. Please help us improve the session. I thank all the speakers very, very much. I think it was really instructive. It was impressive. It is a rare occasion to hear about these questions, not just from the media and the news, but hands-on. And I hope you will come back and join us for the next sessions of the Global Bean. And I would especially like to thank Lisa for getting the whole thing organized, and Anne, who really did the technique in the background. And I also want to thank Romain. And once again, I would very much like to thank our speakers for today. It was a great session, and thank you so much. And thank you also for your patience. And it's just 5 minutes overrun. I think the topic was worth it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, and have a